out here? Si potessimo molesti tu petiste, per questo insomma, si potessimo battere tu pour tout passer city, Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Hiso Tensoku is a game that I've been playing for quite a while now, enough to where I've seen all sorts of horrors and sins to mankind, yet I come back every day because I get some sort of sick, perverse pleasure in just beating people up and taking clips and wins and kills and whatever, and occasionally taking the most embarrassing loss of my life, but that's not what this video is about today. Today I'm going to be talking about a certain mechanic in the game which hasn't been discussed that often, that being the bullets of this game. And one thing that this game has over many other fighting games is its bullets. The bullets in this game are, how do I describe it, extremely fucking complicated. Instead of it just being a simple extension to the character's moveset, it's an entire system which has many different layers to it and has been expanded upon heavily, to where it's a literal mainstay feature of the later Toho fighting games. So I feel like it's my duty to make a video on this shit, because nobody has done it on YouTube so far, at least from what I could find. But I'm just gonna put it out there real quick. I am not a professional at this game. I do not know what the fuck I'm talking about half the time. I'm just making this video because I want to give my attempt and throw my hat in the ring. So if anyone has any suggestions in the comments on how I can fix things, or what I could say, or what I can add, more or less, that's better than whatever explanation I have now, please feel free to do so. And without further ado, here's how Hiso Ten's bullet system works, and why it's interesting, and why I fucking love it. So Hiso Tensoku's bullets are divided into three distinct types. Type 1 are normal bullets that can be grazed and not lend you a penalty of reduced spirits. This can also be any normal bullet that you come across, basically. Type 2 are abrasive bullets that can be grazed but take up the spirit of the grazing opponent, and these usually come from spell card bullets and such. And then you finally got Type 3, which are bullets that cannot be grazed at all, even with Spring Haze, and work basically like melees, in a sense. Example of this being Tenshi's Quake, and Suika's Gnome Thick, or no, I don't fucking know, Gnome, whatever. The D623, basically. You need to focus on the first two, since the first two are basically just gonna be there in almost every single scenario that you come across. Basically 99% of the scenarios that you come across. For example, knowing which ones will take your spirits, and then which ones can't, so that way you can determine from there what to do. And now I want to bring up density in this game. Density is a pretty important thing to learn as well, because density in this game is complicated, to say the least. Yeah, very complicated, because in other fighting games, when you clash with projectiles, they simply just cancel each other out in most cases, more likely than not. Not in this game. It plays completely differently with its bullets, starting from the tiering system for its different projectiles. The goal is basically just to determine which bullets will eat the other, and which will remain on screen. This is especially crucial to know, especially in certain matchups where bullets matter a fuck ton. And if you are on the receiving end, well then this can make neutral very fucking hard to deal with. So on that note, let's talk about the two main factors that you actually have to deal with in this game. The tier and the strength. Just like I discussed before, tier is very important, and it will basically apply to all the bullets that you will ever come across in this game. First off, you have the tiering system. The tiering system simply goes from lowest to highest, C to B to A to S, and I will go over all of them currently in detail right now. First, we start off with C bullets, or which comes from your weak shot B, which is basically your X on your keyboard if you're using default settings. What it does basically is shoots out these weak bullets, and it comes from the B button. These can usually come from the normals in question, or it will come from the skills. And then you got the B bullets, which are from the strong shots. These can come from the C button on your keyboard. Yes, very confusing, I know. And these can also just come off from skills. And then you got A and S tier. A and S tier are usually reserved for spell cards only. and they're not so often encountered, which makes them pretty much not required to learn, but it would be pretty handy to learn them just in case you need to just know it. So let me give an example for this. Basically, if a B tier bullet clashes with the C tier one, then the B bullet will win. The B tier bullet will win. And if an A tier goes against an S tier, it will lose to the S tier, and so on and so forth. Basically, these just tiers determine the strength of a bullet, but of course, as I said before, there are two factors of this. Which brings up my next point. Strength. Strength is another factor that is extremely important to understand, as you can't just have a BC bullet war constantly, and just determine just off that alone. So of course, they have strength, which is basically just the density of the bullets itself, or well, the strength of it. For a lack of a better word, it's basically just the amount of hit points the bullet can take and has. For example, if a bullet shows up with 1 hit point, then it is the weakest, and if it shows up with 10, it's the strongest, and vice versa. And due to this, it can create some very interesting interactions. Basically, for an example that I can give for this, think of Marissa's 5C and Mailing's 5C. At first you might say, well, Mailing's 5C is gonna win because, oh, it's B3 times 1, and Marissa's is B1 times 1, which basically means, oh yeah, at first it's gonna win. But no, this is actually wrong. The reason being is that Marissa has 2 phases for her bullets. Her first phase is basically where she shoots it out and it's about to hit the opponent. This is just its base, it's 1 strength. But when it hits, it immediately adds an extra 3 onto that due to the bullet's explosion. And due to this adds up to 4. 3 plus 1 equals 4 against Mailing's 3. And due to this, Marissa's bullet ends up winning with 1 hit point left, which leaves a lingering thing, which is why, on occasion, if you run into it after you clear it, you'll just get hit, because guess what? It's still on screen, and it's still active. Therefore, so this is why you can have interactions where for some reason, Remilia's 5C doesn't actually end up winning, but Marissa's does. How could this be? How? And then it just turns out, oh yeah, she actually does gain extra points and strength through the fucking explosion itself. Surprise, surprise. And now that you got all of that down, now you actually got to understand, oh wow, how do I order these? How do I set the notation for this bullet? Well, you're in luck, because there's a very specific way to notate it. Specifically, it goes through tier, and then your density, which is the strength, and then it goes with the projectile count. So basically, let's just say that you have a bullet like Mailing's 5C once again. You would classify it as B, which is its tier, its projectile count, which is 1 at the very end, and then in the middle, before the X, sandwiched between the B and the 1 and the X, you get its actual strength, which is, 1, which is, 3. And now we get into graze resistance, which is another topic that I feel is heavily misunderstood. And due to this, I'm going to break it down right now. Basically, graze resistance is calculated in frames. The lowest it can get to is 1 frame, and it allows you to instantly graze through and clear bullets for virtually no penalty. This applies to Komachi's coins. All of them. All you need to do is graze through them and they're gone. And it's that fucking simple. But with the Wisps, it actually has 10 frames. 10 frames, which you need to sit there and graze. And if you graze for any less than 10 frames, well then you get hit pretty much. You get hit and you suffer. So due to this, you need to keep this in mind very, very well, because if you don't keep this in mind, then you will eventually get hit in neutral a lot more than you should be, and this can overall detriment your gameplay. This is why I think that you should at least take a glance to see if it is at least over 10 or it's under 10 or whatever, so you can, in your head, calculate how long you need to graze through the bullets for them to be gone so you can continue and move forward. And due to this ties also back to the type of bullets, which is, type 1, type 2, etc, etc. Also keep in mind that there are some lasers in this game which have B4 density, like for example Alice's lasers, but there are also some with infinite density and infinite graze resistance, such as Oku's lasers or Marissa's 6C. And due to this, and TestPro's wonderful decision making, it can be very confusing to determine which is which. But you can pretty much eyeball the frames at times, and you can pretty much easily get away with doing all sorts of stuff just by eyeballing it and just telling based off what it is. And for example, if it's a solid physical object such as a coin, it will obviously bounce off you when you're dashing at it at Mach fucking 80. Compared to wisps, which will fucking float around and do their ghost floaty shit. And from there you can just, I guess, eyeball it in game, and if you really are confused, just go to the wiki and go see the graze resistance itself, and then maybe you'll fucking figure out what it is. Either way, it's a very useful way of telling, just to go and look at the wiki. A mistake that I have made in the past, which is not looking at the wiki. So in conclusion, this game has very, very complicated systems, and one of them is bullets. And it's something which a lot of people I feel neglect, either that or gloss over, despite it having some very useful stuff about it. If you're really serious about going pro or taking this game seriously, which you fucking shouldn't by the way, but if you are, then this is pretty much a must-have. A must-have and a must-learn for all sorts of these mechanics. Because if you don't learn these mechanics, they will usually fuck you up in some way or another. Oh, you don't learn bullet density, or you don't learn the strengths or whatever, well then you're gonna start losing bullet wars more often. You don't know graze resistance, then you're gonna start getting hit by stray stuff, such as a stray 5C, or a stray 6B, or a stray whatever. And due to this, once again, generally recommended. Just like how you'd learn pressure, defense, or neutral, or your melees, or anything else like that. It is just important to learn altogether, and I feel like it is heavily glossed over. Anyway, that's enough for me. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you had fun listening to me talk in an actual format for once, instead of me just making shitpost videos. And I'll see you on the next one.
Eat during Ramadan. Do Muslims eat 30 days? Do Muslims eat 30 days? Do Muslims not eat every 30 days during Ramadan?
During Ramadan.